Smith moved to this house in 1778. That's 2 years after the publication of The Wealth of Nations. It's quite likely that this was the fireplace of the room in which Smith staged the most disastrous moment in his intellectual career. He did not want any of his unpolished, unfinished manuscripts to survive him. And he laid down in his will that his 2 executors were to burn these papers after his death. But that wasn't enough. And really, almost days before his death, he summoned his executors and said, "I want you to do it now." And they sat there in front of the fire and systematically burned all his unpublished manuscripts. What has survived was simply 2 highly polished works, his great theory of moral sentiments and his even greater Wealth of Nations.
The Wealth of Nations, which survived the fire, has been presented over the centuries as the founding book of the free market system. Many of Adam Smith's notes were destroyed in the fire, leaving us with only this book and the interpretations of those who have used it to promote the very narrow view of the market as a science.
The history of The Wealth of Nations as a book is actually quite interesting. If you look at the first edition, it's an expensive production, and it looks to me as though this was a book destined for a specialist market, a market of philosophers, a market of politicians. But what's interesting is by the time you get to the latter part of Smith's life, to the edition of 1784, it's now become a cheap edition. It's now become a mass-produced edition. In other words, what's intended for a specialist market is now becoming something like a bestseller. And it's going to stay like that. The book has never been out of print. It's always been a bestseller. It does raise questions about what turns a specialist book like that into a bestseller. I think part of it is that it looked as though Smith had actually done what Newton did for the natural sciences. That he had actually discovered a principle, a law of movement, a law of motion.
Je crois que Adam Smith a créé le cadre conceptuel de la théorie moderne contemporaine, des individus en interaction sur des marchés. Mais il n'a pas fait de modèle, il n'a pas quantifié. Pour lui, c'était une vision de l'économie marchande. La révolution est arrivée au milieu du XIXe siècle, lorsque les économistes ont pris les outils de la physique newtonienne pour l'appliquer à l'économie. Au point que là, l'illusion a été de trouver l'équivalent des lois physiques pour l'économie.
It's hard to imagine how this primitive smelter in Calcutta, India, has anything to do with the Wealth of Nations. But work here is following the first principle of Adam Smith's book, division of labor, a principle which after Smith's death has been elevated to a scientific law.
One of the characteristics of the society you know that I know is the intense degree of specialization which takes place in employments, ranging from the most skilled and complicated employments to the most simple.
To take an example, the trade of a pin maker could perhaps, with his utmost industry, make 1 pin a day. But in the way this business is now being carried on, one draws out the wire, another straightens it, another cuts it, a fourth points it. I have seen a small manufactory of this kind where 10 men make among themselves 12 pounds of pins a day. Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations.
So he comes to the conclusion that progress, economic progress, has got everything to do with the division of labor.
No wonder the division of labor has been treated as the equivalent of a Newtonian law. After all, it has been the engine of wealth creation used in the manufacture of almost every product we know. From a sophisticated iPad to a single pencil. For Smith's followers, the division of labor has become a pillar of the free market economy.
To enable millions of people to cooperate peacefully together, we need to understand how it is that a free market works. I know no better way to bring this out than by a very simple example called I the Pencil. This is the only prop I have for this TV show. As you can see, it's a plain yellow pencil. There's nobody in the world who knows how to make a pencil. Now that seems like a silly thing to say, isn't it? This is just the most obvious thing. It's only a piece of wood with something black in the middle and a little red tip at the end. What do you mean nobody knows how to make a pencil? Well, suppose you were to start to set out to make a pencil. First of all, you have to get some wood, don't you? Where do you get the wood? You have to go to the Pacific Northwest, probably, and cut down some trees. How do you cut down some trees? You have to have some saws to cut it with. Where do you get the saws? You have to have some steel. Where do you get the steel? You have to have a steel mill. In order to have the steel mill, you have to get the iron ore, and you can add all the rest. But that's only the beginning. This black stuff in the middle that we call lead isn't lead. It's graphite, I think. I'm not absolutely sure. And I am told it comes from some mines in South America. Now, this little red tip at the top, that's rubber. Where's it come from? Well, the major source of natural rubber is Malaya. But the miracle of this pencil isn't that nobody knows how to make it. The miracle of the pencil is how did it get made? What is it that has enabled this little elementary transaction to take place? Now, how is that brought about? Is there some commissar sitting in some central office who is sending out orders to these people in Malaya, to these people in South America, to the people in Washington? How is it that they are led to cooperate with one another? These thousands of people who have been led to engage in this simple transaction, not one of them has been forced to do it. Nobody has had a gun to his head. They've all done it. Why? Because each one of them thinks he's better off in this transaction.
En fait, le mot liberté joue un rôle énorme dans la diffusion du libéralisme, puisque l'idée intuitive est suivante: pourquoi enlever à quelqu'un le droit de transacter sur un marché? C'est un droit élémentaire, et pourquoi ça serait mauvais? Eh bien, c'est tout simplement que, par exemple, si je suis un pauvre paysan qui négocie par rapport à une grande multinationale, c'est la multinationale qui fait le prix et pas moi. Donc, le premier élément, c'est que je suis libre de transacter sous un effet d'asymétrie du pouvoir qui fait que je n'ai aucun rôle dans la formation du prix.
An iPad factory in Shenzhen, China. A global assembly line for parts that come from all over the world. The 21st century global version of Adam Smith's pin factory. There are 250,000 workers in this factory, producing close to 10,000 iPads a day. But can we call the workers who manufacture them free?
我们做的工作也是就是流水线，然后机台留下来，我们也就是做的就是很机械的事情，就是测试这个机台。所以说生活嘛，我感觉工作嘛，我感觉还是蛮枯燥的。在富士康在这里面人员被高度的分化，就是说你同一个地方来的，就是说你在一个地方工作的话，也不可能住在一个地方。这边的人，城市里的人都是被高度分化的。用我们经常说的一句话就是“离家的孩子像根草”。
So this is the moral dilemma at the heart of the wealth of nations. The economic logic of division of labor versus the human cost to achieve it. But was Adam Smith blind to this dilemma?
Adam Smith is very rarely read. He's worshipped, but not read. I mean, everyone who went to college learned the first paragraph of Wealth of Nations.
The greatest improvements in the productive power of labor and the greater part of the skill, dexterity, and judgment seem to have been the effects for the division of labor. Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations.
Not very many people got to page, whatever it is, page 400, in which he points out that division of labor is monstrous.
In the progress of the division of labor, a great body of people comes to be confined to a few very simple operations. The worker has no occasion to exert his understanding. Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations.
It turns people into creatures as stupid and ignorant as a person can possibly be. It's a person who just becomes a machine. That's a terrible attack on fundamental human rights. And therefore, he says, in any civilized society, the government is going to have to intervene to prevent division of labor. How many people get that far?
The Industrial Revolution was founded upon the creation of a factory system with large-scale machinery and, of course, a labor process. It was very different from that which artisans making their, cabinets or so on engaged in. It was completely different machine technology, which then was dominating. The machine controls the labourer rather than labour controlling the tool, which was true of artisan production. And of course, social relations do indeed change. The labourer in the factory has a very different set of social relations with other labourers and a very different set of relations with the tools, a very different relation to nature than the artisan in a workshop sort of, making a cabinet or whatever.
For centuries, economists and politicians ignored Adam Smith's own recognition of the moral dilemma at the heart of division of labor. Self-interest, his second most quoted principle, suffered a similar fate.